In this episode of the Project Management Podcast, we look into specific leadership behaviors you can practice to adapt to a chaotic and challenging situation.
Hello and welcome to the Project Management Podcast at pm-podcast.com. I am Cornelius Fichtner. We are coming to you live from the lively 2017 PMI Global Conference in Chicago. With me right now is Nirut Kumar. Hello, Nirut.
Thank you, Cornelius. It's nice to be able to talk to you again.
Yeah, we finally meet in person, aren't we?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's so good to see you.
How is the conference going for you so far?
The conference has been fun. A lot of activities and things that people can take back to their work. It's definitely very helpful for anybody who is a project practitioner, not just for a project manager, but anybody who works with projects. Even for stakeholders, this conference can be very helpful.
Mm-hmm. You have just finished your presentation a few minutes ago. How was it for you?
It was great. People participated, and I was glad to see the audience interest and how they all resonated with the topic and how they can use some of the things we discussed.
All right. We'll look into all of that as well.
Great.
The topic is leading during a disaster. Lessons learned from the 2016 Louisiana flood. What's the story behind it? What interested you in presenting this topic here at the Congress?
I decided to present this topic because when we are in a situation that's chaotic and disastrous like this event was for our work situation, we go through events, we work with other people, we use some skills, we also learn the limitations of what we read in books and how we really end up practicing when it comes to leading people, influencing people. And what I do is I put a leadership lens on what took place in this context at work. And I give out some tips and ideas that project practitioners and leaders can use to be more effective in a chaotic situation.
Mm-hmm. How were you personally affected during this situation?
I was affected very deeply because, as I said before, it's one thing to read about a flood. It's one thing to read about a difficult situation or a war situation. It's one thing to live through a disaster and work through that. And I was in the midst of it. And I wanted to share what happens when you're in the middle of it. How does it unfold? And how difficult it is to keep people motivated. How difficult it is to get the work done. What should we focus on? And also how some of the things that you read in the news media are very different when you're in the middle of it, when you're trying to get your work done. At the end of the day, we are professionals. We get paid to hit a target. We get our accolades from working through people. And that's my focus. That's what we come to work for every day. And I felt like this event, the way it changed me from inside, it refined my leadership abilities. Before that situation, I was able to lead people. But now after I have gone through that, I would be talking to them differently if I were in a similar situation. So I would say as a team, people who go through this situation, it helps them grow in a certain way. It helps them balance different things, including we have to get the work done, but how do we talk to people so they are still motivated? They get the work done, but they also feel good about it at the end of the day.
How did you keep yourself motivated during that time?
I kept myself motivated by just going through certain steps that I discuss in this presentation. And I believe that to lead others, you first have to lead yourself. You first have to be in the right emotional state, in the right motivational state to be able to accomplish work through others. I learned that when you are in a difficult spot and you are struck by a grief, you're struck by any kind of grief, you go through a staged approach. We like to call it 6 stages of grief. And I felt like we as humans go through those stages when we're hit by grief. And it's good to know in advance that when we go through a tough situation, first we like to deny it. We like to isolate ourselves from the difficulty, and then we like to bargain with a universe or with God or with our people who we think are the power to be. And at the end of the day, we accept the situation as what it is, and then we work from there. So processing grief, to me, for any individual is an important concept, not just in theory, but in practice as well. I also kept myself motivated because I have a great team. At the end of the day, I believe that your team motivates you and you motivate your team. We are all in a difficult situation together. So having a great team makes a lot of difference. Mm-hmm. So I would say my ability to really manage my emotions when we go through a tough time, and understand that all of us have different ways of managing our emotions, and being self-aware about it helps you go through it, helped me go through it better. And also reach out to others and understand that we can help each other out. Leadership is a contact sport. I forgot who said it, but it's a very, very true statement. It's something where you work with others. You know that there is somebody who can step in if you're feeling bad. You know that if you have a team that reports to you, or you're running a project where there are people assigned to your project, if they trust in you and you have done the work to keep and generate the trust, they'll step up. Even during difficult times, they will do what's right for you, for your team. So those are the things I think about when I think about keeping myself, and that applies to anybody if they want to keep themselves motivated.
Mm-hmm. How do you define leadership?
I like to define leadership as how and what you do with people, how you think about people, how you talk to them, how you influence through people. So to me, it's about whatever skills you use to be influencing and working with people, they all combined, all the behaviors and thinking and actions, they are leadership skills to me. And I call them skills because they can be learned. I believe that just like other skills for a project manager, leadership skills can be learned. Sometimes they take longer than a technical skill takes to learn, but I call them skills for that reason.
Mm-hmm. What did your team do during this event?
My team worked on the tasks that we generally do. My team provides internal support to our largest operational team. And what changed for us during this event was how we had to work through some of the tasks that we generally would not work on because of the emergency situations, because our customers needed special processes. They needed different systems configuration. So we changed those things so we are able to work for our customers and with our government guidelines.
Mm-hmm. So what are some of the leadership behaviors that you used during this flood in order to keep your team motivated?
The first thing I do is I've always thought that good leaders create followers and great leaders create leaders on their team. And I want to be creating leaders all the time. So the first thing that I did, or rather I had done before that ended up helping me, was I like to empower other people and always think in terms of who can do my job if I were not here. Growing somebody on your team is very, very important to me. And there were a few team members who were able to lead the team when I was unable to get to work. So that's the first thing that I did in advance. I think all the leaders should do. They should develop other leaders. So when they step away, somebody can take their place. The other steps that I took is that I think it seems very simple, but something that goes a long way is listening to people's problems when they're in a difficult spot. For example, we are at work to get the work done. But if people have lost their homes and they want to talk to you about it, they want a sympathetic person to listen to them. They want somebody who would say, I understand your problem. Let's see. The most important thing is understanding their problem, putting ourselves in their shoes and not just trying to solve it right away. Being empathetic goes a long way in generating the trust you need in critical time to be able to ask them to do something for you and for the team. So I would say keep creating leaders on your team. If you are a leader today, I would say become a better listener. Understand that there are times when you just have to lend your ears. You don't have to solve their problems yet. That time also comes. Meet them where they are. If they are hurting, if they have lost their lives, if they have no car to get to work, if they have no place to live after they get out of work, right? If they're living at a makeshift arrangement, it's good to let people know that you understand their problems and you're willing to walk in their shoes. And I think once you get that, once you are able to ask them questions, understand the pain they are in, you can work from there because then you will ask questions of them differently. You will demand things of them, but in the context of the pain that they are working through. That changes how you interact with people. So I think that really helped us in terms of the behaviors and influencing other people. I also believe that leadership at the end of the day is also getting stuff done, getting the tasks done. I think one of the things that I recommend project leaders do is they think about what can be done today or tomorrow, like in a small chunks of time when you're in a disaster, or in a chaotic situation. When things are going perfectly well in a project, let's say you do a communication once a week. You find out what's wrong maybe once in 2 weeks. So you have a lot more time to assess the team's performance, team's deliverables. In difficult spots like this, you have very little time. You might have to assess the work every day. You might have to see how are things moving every day. If you are a leader, one of the things leaders always have to do very well, one of the first things is they have to set the vision for the team. We have to paint the picture for our team, tell them where they're going. Because if we fail to do that, we have failed as a leader. That's one of the first things we do, no matter what the situation. In a chaotic situation, when people are confused, when things are broken, they don't know where to go. That skill of setting and communicating vision importance becomes a lot more important. That means you might have to tell them every day, folks, we are going to do XYZ by the end of today. Not by the end of a month, not by the end of a year, because that's what they're looking for from you as a leader. They want you to tell them what's due today. And they want you to tell them when you are done, they're done with the work. They want you to tell them that it's complete. I think one of the things that leaders also sometimes lose sight of is that it's better to talk about a little bit of progress than talk about a lot of work and no progress. Let me give you an example. Let's say that in regular project work, when things are just going fine and you have all the resources at your disposal, you have all the budget money and there is time available for the project work to be done. Let's say you have 10 tasks that you want your team to accomplish in a day. During chaotic and disastrous situation, you might want to prioritize which 3 you want to get done, not 10, because in these situations, you might not have the full capacity. If you had 100 people on your team, you might only have 40 people or 30 people. So you might want to prioritize the work. And once you have prioritized the work, the task list to a smaller list, then at that point, you are better off working with the team to get all those 3 done, completed. Because once they complete the work, even though the list is smaller, they will feel more motivated. They will feel more accomplished and they'll go home happy. And that can give them a reason and a motivation to keep working through the tough situation. So you want to think about progress and completion of the tasks and not do let's do everything. Because when you try to do everything, nothing gets done in those situations. And not only it affects your task and the projects, it affects their motivation, because motivation is tied to the progress we make. They need to know what progress they made that day. And that's how you want to communicate to your team.
But this is true not only in situations where you have disasters going on around you. This is true in everyday project management.
Absolutely.
Really.
The fundamental concept that the people look for progress and completion is important no matter what situation you are in. The same concept becomes more important for you, because to take advantage of that concept and use that to get the work done and keep things motivated, you might have to reconfigure the task. And that's where the trick is during chaotic situations. Give the team the clarity they need. In regular situations, you might tell them, here are the 10 tasks, and I'll talk to you after 2 weeks. And if they're self-motivated professional, they will keep working on it. In chaotic situations, you might have to tell them that this is the one task that needs to be done today. And let's talk tomorrow and see how we are doing. That's the difference. You change the frequency and you change the number of tasks, and when you kind of check in with the team and kind of assess how things are going. So what changes here is in terms of the game, what changes here is that you might have to do a lot more work in assessment and motivation than you are used to. In regular situations, the frequency doesn't have to be that often. In disastrous situations, you have to stay close to them and watch them more often.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned that there is a process grief that happens in chaotic situations like this, that some of your team members, they had, that their homes were destroyed during this. Were you able to provide anything to them to help them through this time? Did your company support you in this in any way?
We did. Our company has a great family-oriented culture, and we have a fund we call. I obviously can't tell all the details, but what we do is we have a fund where employees can help other employees, and the company matches the benefit. So let's say, for example, Cornelius's house was flooded, or you lost your car, and you might benefit from getting a small contribution to just get by for a week. What we do for that is we have a fund where I, Neeraj, who is your coworker, can contribute. Let's say I contributed $100 to that fund. The company will automatically match that $100. So now we have $200 for Cornelius to take out from that fund because he needs it. And now if we have a lot of employees like me who are putting $100, it adds up. So that goes a long way in terms of the monetary help that we provide. I think one of the things I would like to mention, though, as a project manager, is that you do what you can, and don't underestimate your ability to help. You might not have money, but you might have, as I said, you might just have time to sit down with somebody who is going through a tough time. That means a lot to a team members. It doesn't take a lot of resources. It takes a lot of positive attitude sometimes. And I think I will end the answer by saying, don't underestimate your ability to help somebody who is in need. You can always do something. You might be able to send them a thank you note. You might be able to, of course, give them money if you can. You might be able to go to their home. Some of our coworkers went to the flooded homes of their colleagues, and they helped clean out the homes of all the toxic fumes, for example, so the house can be cleaned and be ready for reconstruction. So that's one thing you can do. Even though we might not have a lot of money, you have time. And sometimes you might not have time. So you can at least listen to your coworkers. So I think we should never underestimate our ability to help a fellow human being.
Was there anything specific that you learned about yourself and your own leadership ability during this time where you say, I learned something, or I grew beyond what I expected that I could do?
I learned that there are some things that I should do. In terms of leadership, is about learning how to behave a certain way, how to think a certain way. And I can think of an example where I am tired like anybody else. I had not slept enough. So in that emotional state, it's difficult to really relate to everybody's pain all the time. We had some employees, some coworkers who were going through tough times, and in the beginning, I didn't relate to them very well. I felt like, well, I listened to them. That's enough. And one of my coworkers, one of my friends who I trust for honest feedback, told me that I should have spent more time listening to somebody who was going through a tough time. And I should have responded differently. Instead of saying, I need to get back to work, I should have stayed with that person a little bit longer. So it's something that for a task-driven person like me was difficult to do. But now I understand that when it comes to people, it's not always right to be efficient. It's not about being productive or efficient. Sometimes it's about being effective. And being effective might take a little longer in the first phases of communication. And it's better to do that than think about times and efficiency, things like that. So that's what I learned. I cannot think about efficiency when I'm working with people's difficulties and listening to them. I need to think about what's effective in this situation. Mm-hmm. Some people need more time from you. As a leader, that's a difficult reality to accept. Some of your team members, some of your followers that you lead, they might want to send you an email and want a response, and they'll be happy that you do that because that's the kind of connection they need. But there are individuals who might need a lot more. They might want to talk about something for half an hour. And there are times when you have to listen to them so they will trust you more. So that's what I learned about myself, that when it comes to influencing people or just being a great listener and a friend, it's not always about efficiency. Sometimes the time is just, we should not give time as much importance as we do in those situations.
Mm. It's relatively easy to know when to go into emergency leader mode because the event happens. That's the moment when you have to think more in the emergency mode. But when do you know when to stop? An event like this isn't just over after a week or 2 weeks. It can take a much longer time. But when do you as a leader decide, okay, things are functioning again, I'm going back to the normal, and I'm making air quotes here, leadership mode?
I don't think you yourself can answer that. I believe that you get to that answer by talking to other people, by looking at the data. For example, I was noticing a pattern early in terms of the people who are coming to work. So let's say in the first 2-3 days, you are seeing that there are 50% of people who are coming to work because other people are flooded or they can't drive. And then you see the amount goes up and down because you will notice that some people are coming back to work, but some people don't want to go back and take some time off to fix their roof, so to speak, or clean up their house or toxic fumes. So the numbers keep varying. But there comes a time when you start seeing that numbers in terms of people and their productivity tends to get to a level that you can work with as a leader, as a professional. You know that I need 10 resources and I have 90% of that available here. I can manage at this level. As a manager, as a project manager, you have that number available to you. That's one input that you get that gives you a decent idea. The other input you get is by looking at the guidelines coming out of the government, coming out of the agencies, sometimes coming out of your senior leadership, because I think it needs to be a decision that you make with hard data, but also with soft input from others. And you combine them and you will know that, okay, this is the time when we are back to normal now and we can perform in that function. It's one thing I'll caution against is just looking at the data or looking at just your gut, because you might think that this is back to normal, but it might not be. So be willing to listen and talk to your fellow leaders in the organization you work for, and they will, you guys, I think it's better to have a collective decision at this point and be open to input that might totally contradict your idea. You might think that, oh, we're ready to go, we can just do everything we were doing before. But then you'll learn from other people that is, we're not there yet. Let's wait for a while. So I would say that in a way, it's like, I like to think in terms of systems and engineering mindset. You have a thesis, but you don't want to go with that yet. You want to validate it. You want to collect input. You want to do a macro assessment of the situation you are operating in, and then get to a decision collectively with other leaders. And then you will know, okay, I have made a good decision. Because if you think it's time to go, and other leaders who are your peers are telling no, it's not, you know that you need to explore more. So that's what I would suggest we do.
It's been a while since this disaster struck, so you have some distance to it. Is there anything that you now say, oh, I would do this differently as a leader?
I would say that what I would do differently at this point is that I will know that I tend to overestimate and sometimes be a little bit more optimistic in terms of amount of work I can push through the team. So I think what I would do in the future is I would look at my first hunch, but validate that with my team members, my team leads, saying, okay, what do you think? Is this reasonable or not? And then get their buy-in before saying, okay, this is where we're going. Now, it's a very tricky situation because getting buy-in means that you have to invest a little bit more time, but it doesn't have to be that way. Sometimes getting buy-in just means just putting your idea out there and just let people tell you what they think of the practicality of it, or is it feasible? So that's what I would do differently now. I tend to be very optimistic, and I tend to think in terms of let's get it done. And I overestimate capacity and work we can push through sometimes. And in regular situations, your team can push through because it doesn't hurt to work 1 hour extra in a day. But in a disaster situation, they can't pull it off. So you have to be careful. And I will be more careful in the future about that.
At the end of your presentation today, what kind of questions did the audience have for you?
Audience, we had an activity that I had designed for the audience. I created a mock project, and I had questions around how will you get your message across as a project leader when your cell phone is not working, when you have no internet connection. What do you do? And for one, I was surprised to hear somebody says, well, I will use some kind of app on my phone. I said, did I say that the data was not available? And so for us, I think I was fascinated by how we take technology for granted. We think it just works. We think internet is available all the time. We think if internet is not available, we have LTE connection, even though I told them that it's not there. Let's assume that it's not there. Tell me what you will do. And still people are responding as if it's available. So that was fascinating for me. And we learned that we take things for granted when it comes to communication medium and communication channels. One of the things that some of the people who had been through the situation clearly related to is that, how project managers do weekly meetings?
Yes.
There is no weekly meeting in this situation. It goes out the window. You don't have the channels and meeting rooms available to do those meetings. People who come to those meetings, they're dealing with disaster themselves. So you don't have that channel established. So you need a different channel to communicate and get your message across. So those were some interesting points that came up. We also learned that people get creative when there is a difficult situation. If you put three heads together, you will come up with ideas that you generally don't think when you are in a nice, relaxed situation, when you have resources at your disposal. So in a way, necessity is the mother of invention.
Okay.
That's what we learned today.
What do you think your listeners, our listeners right now, and the people attending your presentation, what they are now should be able to do now that they have heard you discuss what you went through and the lessons you have learned?
They will be able to prioritize their tasks very simply, not getting too complex, because you don't have time to get complex and use fancy spreadsheets when you have a disaster. They'll be able to do that. They will be able to practice some behaviors that can push you towards success in disaster situation. In any chaotic situations, they understand the value of providing clarity more frequently when the situation is chaotic. So those are the things I think people will be able to do that they were unable to do. And we came up with some ideas that other participants shared, which was very fascinating to me. I like to make my presentation participatory, and people share ideas with each other that's not on my slides or on my presentation topics, but they share ideas with each other. And that was very helpful because some of the audience members had been in similar situations in other places, in different places. For example, one participant in the audience told us that when there is a disaster, the amount of work expected from us actually goes up because he works in a infrastructure related business. So it's so simple when we think about it. Of course, when there is a disaster situation in your city and somebody is maintaining infrastructure, they need more infrastructure maintenance to help people get through, to help people get the message they need, to help people transport as they need. So those were some of the things that other participants will learn from each other. And I think now they'll approach a difficult, chaotic situation with a different mindset. It's like, I feel like, how if we have been through a prototypical situation in life, or if we have done a test, and if we have to do the same thing in a real life, the test might not have simulated everything perfectly, but in your mind, you are prepared for something to strike you. You are not surprised by something's coming your way. I think that's the biggest benefit of listening to and participating in a presentation like this, where we share what we went through and we learn from each other. So next time, all of us are better prepared if the situation does come our way.
From your own experience, what you have learned, then developed this presentation, given the speech today, the interview we have just done, what is the one thing that you want people to remember? If there's only one thing they can take home.
The one thing I want people to remember is that you get work done through people. And never forget that. People are more important than other things that you have on your plate.
Thank you so much, Niroj.
Thank you, Cornelius.